So, you want to play Kingmaker. Hello and welcome back to Podfinder. My name is Philip, and I'm here to talk about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Today's video is another video player's guide, this time focusing on one of the most popular APs in all of Pathfinder's history, Kingmaker. Just like the last guide, this video will provide a brief overview of the structure and themes of the campaign, while remaining light on spoilers. I'll provide a rundown of the setting and the lore leading up to the campaign, then dig into some mechanical options players can select to have a thematic connection to the story, including ancestries, classes, and religious options. Also, this is part 1 of a 2-part series for Kingmaker. Famously, this campaign introduces a huge rules subsystem for kingdom management, and a similar subsystem for exploration. I am working on a second video to cover these topics, so players can be as prepared as possible before they start the AP. That video is going to be a bit of a beast, however, so my current goal is to have it out by January. I know that's a long wait, but I've never made a rules-focused video before, and I want to be thorough but concise. Also, I want to keep up my normal production schedule, and I'm not going to let a rules video get in the way of that. Thank you for your patience. So, without further ado, let's start with the campaign overview. Very minor spoiler alert for Chapter 1 of the AP, plus the broad strokes of the story. I won't spoil anything you can't infer from reading the blurb on the back cover of the book or looking at the picture on the front. Kingmaker is one of the most famous adventure paths Paizo ever produced for 1st edition. It was originally published as a 6-part AP in 2010, covering books 31 through 36 in the Adventure Path product line, taking players from level 1 to about level 18. It spawned a PC game from Owlcat Games, and the popularity of the original printing and the PC game caused Paizo to re-release the collected AP as a single hardcover book for 2nd edition, which takes players from level 1 all the way to level 20. This is the version of the game I will be discussing today, though many of the themes and recommendations should be backwards compatible for 1E, if that's your preferred system. In addition to watching this video, I strongly recommend players and GMs read the Player's Guide for the AP, which I've linked below and is available for free online. Kingmaker is a sandbox-style adventure path, providing players with a broad goal, then pointing them in a direction, and letting them loose to pursue that goal however they wish. Broadly speaking, the players are tasked with exploring a wilderness region called the Stolen Lands. Their goal is to clear the dangers in the region, establish a settlement, and manage the growth of that settlement into a fledgling nation. Due to the impressive scale of the story, the campaign introduces several new rules subsystems for territorial exploration, kingdom management, and narrative mass combat. I bring all this up to warn players and GMs that Kingmaker can very quickly turn into an absolute beast to run. If you fully explore everything the AP has to offer, Kingmaker can take twice as long to run as a conventional 1-20 campaign, or even longer. You can, of course, rein this in by limiting the investment the group puts into the various aspects of the campaign, but even more than most campaigns, it's important to make sure that all the players and the GM are on the same page regarding what they want from the story and how much time they're willing to invest. The AP begins in Brevoy, a nation in the cold northeast corner of Avestan. Brevoy is a nation of storied history and complex politics, which very clearly takes inspiration from George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. As a bid to maintain political power and build new alliances, a Brevish noblewoman named Jamandi Aldori has gathered various adventurers to her estate in the southern region of Rostland. Though the PCs don't know it yet, Aldori's intent is to send the adventuring party south into the untamed region known as the Stolen Lands, where they are expected to tame the dangers of the wild and set up a new nation as a member of the River Kingdoms. After the introduction, the first chapters of the campaign proper focus on the exploration of the Stolen Lands. This is a dangerous and unsettled place, full of a wide variety of threats and hazards. The themes of these chapters focus on wilderness survival and exploration. These themes will remain present throughout the first half of the AP, but they will slowly fade into the background over time as the PCs carve out a swath of territory from which their kingdom will rise. As the wilderness recedes, however, the real work begins. The PCs go from explorers of the wild to defenders of their community, as their growing settlements are threatened by the dangers of the stolen lands. In addition to repelling these dangers, the kingdom management aspects of the game kick in, and the PCs take on the roles of leaders in their nation. These roles can range from heads of state to leaders of the military, and players should make sure that their characters can meaningfully interact with this aspect of the story, or they risk missing out on a lot of potential fun. As the campaign continues, the story takes on aspects of political intrigue and military conflict, reflecting the growth of the nation and the increasing importance of the PCs on the regional stage. Interactions with neighboring lands become extremely relevant in the latter half of the story. At the conclusion of the tale, many of these themes come together as an unexpected danger looms over the kingdom and threatens to reduce the PC's many accomplishments to ruin and rubble. Kingmaker takes place in a region known as the Stolen Lands. However, much of the story is informed by the histories and political climates of the neighboring regions: Brevoy to the north, the River Kingdoms to the southwest, and Iobaria in the northeast. I'll discuss each of these regions in brief, then cover the known information on the Stolen Lands. As mentioned earlier, the story of Kingmaker starts off in Brevoy. Brevoy is a nation with a complex history. Located at the far northeast corner of Avestan, Brevoy is situated on the shore of the Lake of Mists and Veils. Its eastern border is shared with Iobaria, the westernmost nation of the continent of Kazmaron. To the west is the Crusader state of Mendev, whose citizens wage an ongoing war with the demons of the Worldwound. Please note that Kingmaker takes place in 4710 AR, meaning the events of the Wrath of the Righteous adventure path have not yet happened in universe. Brevoy is ruled by King Noleski Sertova, who was crowned 10 years ago due to the promise of a political marriage to the daughter of a rival family. This marriage has yet to occur, however, and the king lacks an heir. This, coupled with the rumor that the king's sister Natala is the real power behind the throne, has led to substantial discontent among the ruling families of Brevoy, and this discontent is the driving force behind the actions Jamandi Aldori takes at the beginning of the story. Political scheming is a hallmark of the noble families of Brevoy, and Jamandi is no exception. Though the politics of Brevoy might be complicated, the River Kingdoms are even more so. The River Kingdoms is a collective term used to refer to a collection of between 15 and 20 nations in a region about the size of the state of Iowa. This territory lies south of Numeria, east of Razmirin, and north of Galt and Kyonin. The River Kingdoms are so named because they are formed around the Selen River system, and these waterways play a vital role in the region's economy. While the laws of the River Kingdoms vary wildly from kingdom to kingdom, they share a unifying code of conduct to which all denizens are held. These are the River Freedoms, 6 declarations which apply universally throughout the region. The River Freedoms are: say what you will, I live free. This promises freedom of speech to all citizens, from lords to peasants. There may be consequences to speech, but outright restrictions on speech are severely frowned upon, even in the most tyrannical kingdoms. Oathbreakers die. The crime of oath-breaking is considered outright heinous in the River Kingdoms, and oaths are legally binding throughout the land. Promises might be hard to extract from the citizens, but those who make them will treat them with severity and reverence. Walk any road, float any river. Travel is considered a sacred right in the River Kingdoms, and the restriction on travel is among the highest crimes a ruler can commit. Blockades, dams, and tollways are practically unheard of as a result. Courts are for kings. This confusingly worded freedom states that all peoples are subject to the laws of the kingdom in which they reside. This even applies to the kings of other nations, meaning monarchs rarely travel beyond their own borders. Slavery is an abomination. Slavery is not tolerated in any of the River Kingdoms, making the region a popular destination for escaped slaves. This is a unifying force in the region, and practically all citizens will stand up to slavers without hesitation. Characters who are escaped slaves or the descendants of escaped slaves could have a very strong motivation to found a new river kingdom in this campaign. You have what you hold. This freedom declares that you have the right to defend your possessions, but whatever you can't defend was never really yours to begin with. To take something by force is generally considered fair and almost honorable, but to take something via stealth is frowned upon and seen as cowardly. Trickery lands somewhere in between. The history of the River Kingdoms is long and complex, but I'll share a few specific tales later. Iobaria is the most remote of the regions which neighbor the Stolen Lands, but it still plays an important role historically. The land plays host to numerous peoples and cultures, from centaurs to halflings to dragons, and many conquerors or powerful warlords have hailed from the region. For the purposes of this campaign, Iobaria is likely just a far-off neighbor, but the history of the region has a way of coming back to haunt the present, especially in the Stolen Lands. That brings us to the Stolen Lands themselves. This region consists of a strip of land running mostly east to west between the southern border of Brevoy and the northeastern border of the River Kingdoms, specifically Pitax and Miven. The Stolen Lands play host to a variety of ecosystems, ranging from mountains in the east and west to plains, swamps, forests, and lakes in the center. The Branthland Mountains rise in the west near the border with Numeria, while the Tors of Levanese rise in the east, limiting east-west travel. The Selen River system, however, enables travel to some extent, as it permeates the entire region extensively. In terms of size, the Stolen Lands encompass an area about the size of Austria, or Portugal if it were turned on its side. For my American listeners, that makes it about as big as Indiana or Maine, again if they were turned mostly sideways. A vast forest called the Gnarl Marches cuts through the center of the region and is commonly referred to as the Green Belt. To the east of the Green Belt, a lake called the Tuskwater provides access to fishing and potentially boat travel. To the west, however, an immense network of swamps called the Hooktongue Slough further divides the land, extending south from Lake Hooktongue. Beyond these broad strokes, it's difficult to get a clear picture of the land without exploring it yourself, or talking to someone who has. What is clear is that natural resources exist in abundance for those willing to find them, though where they are and how best to harvest them remains to be seen. The Stolen Lands remain largely unexplored to this day. The Taldan Empire has attempted to map and settle them in the past, but this attempt failed. The Taldans did, however, leave behind signs of their attempt, and abandoned mines or quarries and the ruins of forts can still be found. Though the territory is unexplored and unmapped, that doesn't mean it is uninhabited. The region is famously home to bandits and brigands who eke out an existence by killing their neighbors, stealing from the rare traveler in the region, hunting game, and raiding nearby nations. One infamous group of berserkers is the Tiger Lords, who have been especially active of late. The region is also home to some incredibly dangerous wildlife, from owlbears to giant snakes to scorpions. Trolls are known to make their homes in the Stolen Lands, and the presence of fey creatures and the broader influence of the First World is felt very strongly throughout. Recorded history in the region where the campaign takes place starts prior to Earthfall, more than 10,000 years ago, with the establishment of a Cyclops empire in Iobaria. Not much is known about this empire today, but rumors abound that a few distant descendants of these Cyclopses remain active even in the Age of Lost Omens. What is clear is that Earthfall brought an end to this empire, setting the stage for several successor states. In the Age of Darkness, the dwarves emerged from the Darklands in their quest for sky. A group of dwarves, called the Golka, emerged into the lands, which would become Brevoy, and established the fortress cities of Heidelv and Brunderton, which still exist to this day. Around this time, 3 ethnic groups of centaurs had risen to power in neighboring Iobaria. After the sun returned to Golarion, they shared political power with the humans of that region. This was all shaken up with the arrival of Ulfin colonizers from the crown of the world. The Ulfin joined with the Iobaran humans and established a small kingdom in Brevoy and northern Iobaria. Millennia later, in about 2000 AR, the Tal'Dorei armies of expansion arrived and divided Brevoy into two regions, Isia in the north and Rostland in the south. A semi-friendly rivalry arose between these two nations, and even though this division was more than 2,700 years ago, this still has political implications to this day. Broadly speaking, Isia has always had a stronger Ulfin culture, while Tal'Dorei culture held greater influence in Rostland. It was during this period that one of the most famous traditions in all of Brevoy began. In 3035, a nobleman by the name of Baron Cirion Aldori was given the governorship of Rostland. Cirion was a skilled swordsman and loved nothing more than dueling, to the extent that he informally titled himself the Sword Baron. In his arrogance, he accepted a challenge from a local bandit king, offering up his position as governor as prize. Cirion lost the duel, but honored his agreement and handed his title over. 9 years later, however, the Sword Baron returned. He challenged the bandit king and asked him for the same terms. The king agreed, but this time the fight ended differently. Aldori ended the fight in moments, reclaiming his governorship. A few years later, he began to select students to whom he would teach his unique fighting style. All students were required to take up the surname Aldori and were sworn to the Aldori Sword Pact, an oath of secrecy and honor. This tradition continues to this day, and the Aldori sword lords pass their techniques only to students they deem worthy and who take up their last name. The Aldori fighting style focuses on defense using the Aldori dueling sword, which practitioners usually use in both one- and two-handed grips. After the collapse of Taldor's great empire in 4081, Isia, Rostland, and the River Kingdoms all became independent. Isia and Rostland were united in 4499, however, by a warrior from Iobaria named Corral the Conqueror. Corral Rogarvia was a terrifying force in Iobaria, and was well known for his alliances with dragons, who, bafflingly, submitted to his will and accepted him as ruler. He conquered Isia through marriage, by joining with Mira Surtova, the daughter of Isia's High Lord. The sword lords of Rostland, however, were not so easily swayed. They resisted Corral until his greatest allies, a pair of red dragons, lured the sword lords into a trap and laid waste to their armies at the Valley of Fire. Several Aldori families fled Rostland altogether as a result, settling in the ruins of Miven in the River Kingdoms, where they established a new state. With the defeat of the sword lords, Corral succeeded in uniting Isia and Rostland into a new nation, which he dubbed Brevoy. Corral ruled for only 10 years, before growing bored with his duties and disappearing from society with some of his closest dragon allies. Rumor has it that he is waiting still in the forests of Brevoy, biding his time until the nation needs its rightful ruler to rise to power once again. Some rumors even swirl that Corral was, in fact, a dragon in human guise, and that was the reason he could command other dragons with impunity. Corral's descendants ruled the nation of Brevoy as House Rogarvia for almost 2 centuries after that, though their power was briefly shaken by the mysterious Drake Plague of 4519, which wiped out half the nation's dragon population. This state of rulership came to a sudden and mysterious end, however, in 4699, only 11 years ago at the time of the campaign. One day in the spring, the head of House Rogarvia, King Ertzin, disappeared without a trace. His retainers sought his heirs, but they had all disappeared as well. This event, called the Vanishing, saw the whole of House Rogarvia vanish with no trace of any kind. This left a power vacuum, which was only filled when Noleski Surtova manipulated his way into power and became king. King Surtova's throne, however, is far from secure, and political machinations between the great houses of Brevoy remain common. In the River Kingdoms, a few legends and tales are worth mentioning. In 4400, Athanasius, supreme ruler of the city-state of Yenshebur in Kazmaran, was forced to flee his home when the city was destroyed in a firestorm of unknown origin. He led his people out of Kazmaran and into the river kingdoms, where he established a kingdom of his own called Daggermark. Athanasi and his army of assassins established a school of assassination in Daggermark, which still exists to this day and is infamous in the region. One of the most famous events in the history of the River Kingdoms occurred in 4434, when the mayor of Haybar sought to drum up some revenue for his city. He ordered the construction of the River Gate, which would control passage beneath the great bridge of his city. The gate would only open once a tax was paid. This restriction on trade was the first of its kind in the River Kingdoms, and discontent grew quickly. Not long after, the Black Sisters of Girona, a coven of hags and witches devoted to the goddess of spite, arrived in the city. They fueled the flames of discontent until finally a civil war erupted. At the conclusion of the hostilities, Haybar was abandoned, and the River Gate had been destroyed. Many in the River Kingdoms view this as a cautionary tale, and claim that the destruction of Haybar was punishment for the violation of the Third River Freedom. To this day, the town remains empty, though hags and priestesses of Girona still see it as a holy site and a place of pilgrimage. Most recently, in 4702, a wandering bard named Castruccio Irivetti arrived in the river kingdom of Pitax. Pitax had been founded 400 years before as a kingdom of bandits and thieves. Castruccio arrived from Numiria and talked or bought his way into power, then lured the heirs to the powerful Leosenza family to a card game. The Leosenzas had become the dominant house in Pitax and controlled much of the trade in the kingdom, as well as the crown. The heirs to the family arrived at the location of the game, but after that, accounts become muddled. The specifics of the event are unclear to everyone, and are disputed by most of those in attendance. What is clear, however, is that Irivetti left the event with a signed contract, an oath, which promised him all the holdings of the Leosenza family, and thus crowned him king. Not long after ascending to the throne, Irivetti founded the Academy of Fine Arts, in an attempt to legitimize himself in the eyes of the international community. Irivetti, however, proved to be a poor manager of such affairs. He closely controlled the types of art his students could perform or create, demanding that they only express themselves in ways he deemed appropriate or which suited his tastes. This drove many talented individuals away, and those who remained behind soon found themselves trapped, with nowhere to go and no artistic future ahead of them. For the record, Irivetti's control likely brushes up against the limits of the First River Freedom. Alright, let's discuss some mechanical information which players can use. Since the story starts in Brevoy, any ancestries native to that region would be an excellent fit for PCs. While Brevoy plays host to a number of ancestries, humans are the most numerous by far. The humans of Brevoy vary wildly in appearance, as the nation is a melting pot of Taldan, Ulfin, Iobarian, and Kelid ethnicities. Characters from the former territories of Rostland might be more Taldan or Kelid in appearance, while Iobarian and Ulfin features will be more prominent in the north towards former Issia. Additionally, while the number of elves in Brevoy is small, a substantial number of Iovarans of human descent exist in the region. The dwarves of Hydelve and Brunderton still maintain a strong presence in the region as well, and the heir to Hydelve, Prince Tolva Golkin, has even been adopted into the noble house of Garrus and named its heir. Dwarves in Brevoy still refer to themselves as Golka dwarves, and seem to descend from a different subterranean community than from their distant cousins in the Five Kings Mountains. The Mirini halflings were once native to Iobaria, but some migrated into Brevoy and the River Kingdoms centuries ago. They suffered greatly in one of the many plagues which struck Iobaria millennia ago, but they remain prevalent in the region in the Age of Lost Omens. Characters born in Brevoy also have a high likelihood of their ancestors having been exposed to the influence of dragons. This was brought on by the conquest of Coral the Conqueror and his dragon allies. Coral himself is suspected to have been a dragon in disguise, so his most trusted allies might very well have been the same. As such, The upcoming Dragonblood versatile heritage might easily be found among Brevin natives. In addition to natives to Brevoy, PCs might choose to play visitors from neighboring regions or nations. Androids and ratfolk, for instance, are common in Numeria and might seek a better life in the relative safety of Brevoy. An android might be motivated to found a kingdom which can be a safe haven for the members of their own kind who are relentlessly hunted by the Technic League. In the River Kingdoms, hags and witches hold substantial influence, so the number of changelings is likely high. A changeling might come to Brevoy seeking to escape from their hag ancestors and the infamous call, which beckons all changelings to return to their mothers. Similarly, Nephilim of demonic descent might be fleeing the World Wound, as it is only a few hundred miles away from Brevoy. Neighboring Iobaria still boasts a large population of centaurs, and the two nations have had relatively friendly relations in recent years. A centaur or family of centaurs might easily migrate to Brevoy seeking a more stable life. Additionally, kobolds and lizard folk are commonly found in the Stolen Lands, and tribes of these creatures still make their homes in the wilderness. These ancestries might make for an especially thematic choice and allow for negotiations between the PCs and several enemy groups they encounter in their exploration. This might even allow players to incorporate substantial numbers of these peoples into their kingdom in the long term. Finally, I want to make special note of all ancestries with connections to the Fae. Fae creatures and the First World are both prominent themes throughout this AP, and characters who can feel a personal connection to these plot points might be drawn even deeper into the story. These ancestries might include sprites, awakened animals, gnomes, or leshies. Additionally, members of any ancestry might consider taking the Fae-influenced line of ancestry feats after they begin coming in contact with the denizens of the First World to express an impact that realm is having on them. I should note, however, that the campaign assumes a level of unfamiliarity on the part of the PCs when dealing with the First World. So, if you play an ancestry with ties to it, you might want to create a backstory where the character's knowledge of the First World is limited for some reason. Due to the wide variety of themes which present themselves throughout the campaign, most classes and character concepts can be made to fit the AP. All that to say, if you want to play a class outside of the ones I recommend here, you won't really be hampering yourself in a meaningful way. Still, a few classes and builds seem to fit this AP quite nicely. First and foremost, the theme of wilderness exploration immediately brings to mind the Ranger and the Druid, as well as clerics of deities of nature. These characters will likely excel in the hexploration parts of the game, and their expertise in survival and nature could serve a party very well. Additional archetypes which play on this theme include the Scout, the Horizon Walker, the Herbalist, the Beastmaster, and the Snarecrafter, and maybe even the Game Hunter if your GM will allow that archetype. In terms of frontliners, there are a few combat styles which stand out in this setting. The first is the Aldori dueling style, which is best represented by the Fighter or the Swashbuckler, or by members of the Duelist archetype. Even a Ranger could be good at this in theory. Players could easily gain access to the Aldori Duelist archetype through Lady Jamandi, though, fair warning, there is substantial overlap between that archetype and the Duelist archetype. I'm hoping a future book expands upon the Aldori Duelist to give it a stronger identity. In lieu of that, however, I've taken a stab at updating the archetype on my own. My version places special emphasis on switching one's grip from one-handed to two-handed and back, which the lore has made clear is one of the key features of the fighting style. Check it out in the description below. The next fighting style, common in Brevoy, is that of the Knight in Shining Armor. Since Brevoy is very clearly the Golarian version of Westeros, it would be kind of weird if there weren't knights, wouldn't it? Fighters and champions are the best fits for this fighting style, though the Sentinel and Bastion archetypes could handle it as well. If you want a horse as a mount, consider the Cavalier archetype, but make sure your GM is willing to play along and give you plenty of battle maps with room to ride. The Guardian and Commander could also play on this theme. Berserkers are the last fighting style common in Brevoy, due to the influence of Ulfin culture and the influx of bandits from the Stolen Lands. Barbarians with the fury, animal, or dragon instincts would have the closest ties to the themes of this campaign. Outside of these themes, I also want to call out the Beast Eidolon Summoner, the Dragon Disciple, and the Archer or Eldritch Archer archetypes, as being good picks for potential frontliners and damage dealers in this campaign. For the skill monkeys out there, I have good news. The Rogue, Investigator, Bard, and Thaumaturge all have ample opportunities to shine in this campaign. Rogues of the Ruffian racket might be slightly overrepresented in the region due to the 6th River freedom, but all rogues will work well here. Thaumaturges with the Regalia implement will fit very well into the kingdom-building aspect of the campaign, especially if they choose one of the more diplomatic or charisma-focused leadership roles. Bards could also excel in this role, and Bard characters might have an exceptionally thematic backstory if they have fled from Pitax and its tyrant and his joke of an academy. The Dandy, Medic, Martial, and Lore Master archetypes could also fill out some important and thematic roles in the party. Caster players have a wide variety of interesting options available to them in this AP. Sorcerers of the Fey or Nymph bloodlines will have an innate connection to the story, but the Draconic or Imperial bloodlines are great choices as well. Witches could connect to some of the themes of the story as well, especially those with access to the primal spell list, or with the Spinner of Threads patron. Summoners with the Fey Eidolon will likely have a good time, as might kineticists with the wood or water elements. I also want to make special note of wizards, maguses, and monks. There are no arcane academies or monasteries in the region where the campaign takes place, but if your character has traveled to the region specifically to form such an institution, then they've got built-in motivation for the kingdom-building aspect of the campaign, and thus, these classes could also be good fits. Players who want their characters to be religious have a few interesting choices of deity. First and foremost, nature deities like Erastil or Gozra are a great choice, especially if the character who follows this deity is determined to set up their kingdom in such a way that it lives in harmony with the natural world. Even the druidic green faith could be an effective choice for this theme. Erastil, as a god of community, also has a strong connection to the kingdom-building aspect of the game. Caden Kalian will also appeal to benevolent characters, and his faith is commonly found in the river kingdoms due to their river freedoms and their dense population of escaped slaves. Desna is also widely worshipped in the region, and will connect to the themes of travel and exploration. Shellen is commonly associated with cultural advancement, and her devotion to freedom of expression, which she shares with Desna, will probably put her followers at odds with Pitax and its king. Hanspur, a god of rivers and trade, is exceptionally popular in the river kingdoms, and his faith will likely take root in the PC's kingdom after it is established, even if none of the PCs are members of the faith. On the less goody-goody end of things, followers of Gorum, god of battle, will find plenty of fights to sate their bloodlust and their thirst for glory. They might also take immense joy in certain events later in the campaign, which I won't spoil. Similarly, devout Callistrians will likely revel in the political intrigue which can develop as the campaign goes on, assuming your group leans into that part of the story. Of course, no one says your party has to be good or benevolent. Maybe you want to be tyrants. If that's the case, I might suggest Norgorber as a good choice of deity, as his faith is common among the thieves of the river kingdoms. Additionally, Girona has cults active in the river kingdoms, to the point that this region serves as an unofficial center of her faith on Avestan. I also want to call out the Eldest, the demigods who rule over the First World, as potentially interesting choices. The prevalence of the Fae in this campaign, and the region more broadly, might draw a character to faith in these strange deities. Before you choose this path, however, talk to your GM. This could have a serious impact on certain story elements, so GM approval and foreknowledge will be very important. Alright, last but not least are the campaign backgrounds. Like other APs, Kingmaker provides several pre-made backgrounds for PCs to connect them to the story. The 7 backgrounds for this campaign provide your characters with a reason they might be interested in founding a kingdom in the Stolen Lands. Also, please note, as of the remaster, backgrounds provide the additional lore feat in the lore skill which the background otherwise provides. Be sure to update the backgrounds presented here accordingly. Borderlands Pioneers are characters who've grown up on the edges of the Stolen Lands. They have experience in a type of terrain common in the Stolen Lands, and more broadly are experienced with the natural world. Your motivation might be to finally settle these lands for good and make life easier for newcomers. Or maybe it might be to reclaim a homestead your family was forced to abandon generations ago. Brevik outcasts are characters with a dubious connection to one of the many noble houses in Brevoy. Many doubt the authenticity of your nobility, and you've learned that there's no way to advance in Brevik society to claim your rightful place, despite your mastery of politics. Your motivation might be to prove your nobility or your lineage by establishing a kingdom of your own. Issian patriots hail from the northern portion of Brevoy, the territory formerly known as Issia. These northern realms are the land of politicking, where social climbing and clever negotiations win the day. Your motivation likely stems from a sense of Brevik patriotism, and you'll be damned if a new kingdom is formed under the influence of a cocky Rostlander. Speaking of which, Rostlanders, by contrast, come from the south of Brevoy, and take pride in the honest, hard-working nature of their fellow countrymen. To you, politics and trickery are a thing of the north, and mean nothing in the face of honor and strength. Brevik patriotism is likely the force driving you into the Stolen Lands. And hey, if it means Rostland can expand its influence in Brevik politics, all the better. Local brigands are characters from either the River Kingdoms or the lawless parts of Brevoy, who made a living through banditry or thievery. Trouble in your homeland has driven you away, and the Stolen Lands sound like a perfect place to avoid notice. Your motivation is likely to escape someone who is pursuing you, possibly a rival bandit group, or perhaps the legitimate authorities. Sword Scions, objectively the coolest background, are characters who grew up near Restov, the starting city for the campaign. Your childhood was spent acting out the legends of the sword baron Syrian Aldori and the sword lords who followed in his footsteps. Your motivation is almost certainly to prove yourself as an Aldori duelist, and to build your legend until you too are acknowledged as an Aldori sword lord. You might have already changed your surname to Aldori, or might do so to gain access to the Aldori duelist archetype. And then there's the Brevik noble background. Paizo totally cheated with this one, since it is basically 6 backgrounds in one. Your character is connected to one of the 6 most powerful noble families of Brevoy. You might be a distant blood member of the family in question, or might be a close friend or confidant to a prominent member of the house. Feel free to work out your specific connection with your GM. Your motivation is likely tied to your desire to prove yourself worthy of the privileged life you've led so far. I should clarify that members of any ancestry might have this background, but humans are probably the ancestry most likely to be actual blood members of a ruling house. The tricky part of this background for me is that you, the player, need to choose which of the 6 major houses of Brevoy you are connected to. So, here goes. House Garrus from Greyhaven is connected to the dwarves of the Golushkin Mountains in western Brevoy. Even if you're a human, some dwarven blood might run in your veins, and you likely have a strong connection to mining, smithing, or some other trade. Your house words are strong as the mountains. House Lebeda is one of the Rostlander houses, and maintains its power from Silverhall. The house rose to power through merchantry, and is typically associated with wealth, wine, and fine art. You probably made a living as a merchant or as a functionary for high society. Your house words are success through grace. House Lodovka hails from Winterbreak, and is a house known for its naval power and its involvement in the fishing and seafood industries. You likely have a connection to the water and to the fish trade, and are probably as comfortable on a boat as you are on land. Your house words are the waters, our fields. House Medved is based out of Stoneclimb, near the Gronzi Forest. The house practices a semi-druidic religion they call the Old Way, which emphasizes a deep respect for nature. You probably have a history as a hunter or scout, despite your well-to-do life. Your house words are endurance overcomes all. House Orlovsky commands Eagle's Watch on Mount Veshkiv. Their position so high up in the mountains mirrors their political tendency to remain above the conflicts of other houses. You likely have some training as either a negotiator or diplomat. Your house words are high above. House Surtova, out of Port Ice, is the house of the current monarch, King Noleski Surtova. This house made its fortune by engaging in piracy and smuggling, but attained its current status through scheming and political maneuvering. Your house words are ours is the right. Well, if you still want to play the Kingmaker adventure path, that should be enough information to get you started, at least for the first few chapters of the campaign. I strongly encourage you to read the player's guide which Paizo has put out. Again, it's totally free and I've linked it below. I will get to work on part 2 for this video discussing the kingdom management rules for the Kingmaker AP. Just like I said at the beginning of this video, my hope is to have that out in January, so thank you again for your patience. I'll be back to my regularly scheduled lore videos next week with the first video for Elf Month, where I discuss Findalad Lara. But this Player's Guide series will continue later this summer, so stick around if you enjoyed this. See you next time.